You are listening to The World As I See It podcast. 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 As I See It.
Hello, everyone. Welcome or welcome back to The World As I See It podcast. So, in our last episode, we really got honest and had a conversation about those specific moments when navigating the world without sight can feel unpredictable or even a little overwhelming at times. But today, I want to take a complete 180-degree turn. I want to talk about the flip side, and I want to talk about the things that I feel that I am actually better at because I am blind. So, usually when people look at my life or they see me out in public, their first instinct is, I guess you could say, to see what's missing, like my sight. They see the white cane or they see me navigating a space and they think about the struggle. They may even think that I'm helpless, or they may even think that, I'm incapable because I'm blind, and they may have pity on me, or they may feel sorry for me. But here's the reality. When you don't rely on your eyes, your other senses, they don't just work harder. I do want to say this right off the bat. Your senses being heightened, that's a myth. And that is a myth that I hear a lot. So my senses are not heightened. I just have to rely on them more because I can't see with my eyes. So I have to basically be in tune with my other senses. Basically, the best way that I can put it is they're highly specialized professional grade tools or skills. And it's a different way of moving through the world that most sighted people, they never even have to tap into because they have the vision. They take their vision for granted. And today I'm going to share the advantages that come with this unique perspective and why, my skills in my toolkit is sharp in ways that you may not expect. So think for a second about how much you rely on your eyes to tell you what is happening in your environment. Think about that for a second. You use your eyes every single day. But for me, my ears are doing that heavy lifting. They aren't just hearing noises. They are basically seeing the world through sound. I catch things that sighted people probably completely overlook because they are too busy looking at, their phones or focusing on what's right in front of them. And I ain't saying this to be offensive. I'm just sharing my perspective. So, I'll give you a perfect example of this. So, I was out with my family and we pulled in to, a store. We were talking and we were getting our things together and we got out of the car. And before I closed the door, my family member was just focused on the task ahead, getting into the store, finding what we needed, and getting back home. So, they closed their door and they started walking away. But I noticed something. I heard the engine. It wasn't loud, but it was there. that low steady hum that tells you the, you know, engine is still on. They didn't even realize that they had left the car running. I had to, be like, hey, the car's still on. And they were like, no, it's not. And I was like, yes, it is, because I can hear it. If I hadn't been tuned in to that specific sound, they would have walked into the store and spent, 20 and 30 minutes shopping while the car just sat there idling. They would have wasted a ton of gas. And, you don't really want to do that. My ears, they catch those shifts in a room or, a machine that others, they just miss because they aren't forced to listen the way that I am. Then there is the mental organization. I often find that I am actually much better at finding things than the people around me who have 20/20 vision. So I can't just glance across a room or scan a shelf to find what I need. I have to be incredibly organized. And this is why, if you move something and don't tell me, it kind of aggravates me. Because I know where everything is at all times. I don't change it. Everything. That's why I'm so organized. Because I have to be. I've had so many moments where a family member is standing right in front of the fridge with the door wide open and they're just staring, looking for something specific. Let's say the mustard. So they are looking and looking, moving jars around and getting frustrated. Eventually they'll be like, I can't find it. It's not here. We must be out. That's when I walk over and I don't need to look. If the fridge is organized and if it hasn't been moved around, I know the layout. So, in certain jars, I know the difference between, like ketchup and mustard, those jars feel different. So I can reach in and usually in about 5 seconds, my hand will land right on the jar, the mustard. And am I perfect at this? No. Because when things get moved around, it is harder to find things. It's right there. And in front of them. But because they were looking for a specific label, they got distracted by other colors in the fridge. And they missed it. And because I don't rely on a quick distraction, like glance, I rely on my knowledge of the space and my sense of touch. And it actually makes me more efficient in my own home than someone who is just looking. And speaking of touch, that's another area where I feel I have a major advantage, especially when it comes to cleaning. It might sound a bit unusual to some of you, but I honestly feel like I am better at things like, for example, washing dishes by hand than most sighted people. So when I first learned how to wash dishes, I realized, my fingers are incredibly sensitive because I have to use them for everything. So they are highly trained to feel texture. So when a sighted person washes a dish, they look at it. And if it looks shiny under the water, they think it's clean and they put it on the drying rack. But I don't use my eyes for obvious reasons. But I use my hands. So I can feel if there is a tiny, bit of residue left on the plate. I can feel a spot of grease that the soap didn't quite catch, or a tiny speck of food that's still stuck to a fork. And I can feel, basically the squeak of a truly clean surface. I feel like I am better at cleaning certain things because my touch gives me that level of, precision that my eyes, they just can't match. And I don't stop until the texture tells me the job is done perfectly. But perhaps the most important advantage, the one that really changes how I live my life, is how I perceive and judge the people I meet. Now, we live in a world that is obsessed with appearance. Sighted people, you often may make up your minds about someone the very first second you see them. If someone has a certain look, or if they look mean, or if they aren't dressed a certain way, people, they tend to stay away or make assumptions about their personality. And I don't have that opinion. I don't see if somebody has a mean look on someone's face. That might just be a bad day, and it may just be a tired expression that they don't even know that they're making. I meet so many people that others may think that they're unapproachable or scary based off of their appearance. But when I start a conversation, I'm listening to the tone of their voice, the kindness in the words, and the way that they actually interact with me. Now, I will say, some people's voices, at first, they sound scary. But once I get to know them, they're the nicest person ever. And so often, I find out that these mean-looking people are, very nice and very helpful. Because I'm not judging the book by its cover, I get to read the whole story. I judge character based on consistency, honesty, and spirit. It allows me to give everyone a fair chance and build a deep, authentic connections that other people, they may miss out on because they were too distracted by surface level things that don't actually matter. Here's the thing though. At the end of the day, I'm not claiming to be a superhero. I'm not claiming to be perfect. I'm just someone who has had to adapt. But in that adaptation, I have developed a specific set of skills that help me navigate life with a lot of focus and a lot of heart. Being blind has forced me to be more observant, more sensitive to the world around me, and much more organized in how I manage my life. And honestly, I wouldn't trade those skills for anything. They make me who I am, and they give me a perspective that is uniquely mine. So, thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you have any questions for the show, ideas for future topics, or just some feedback that you would like to share, you can email me at theworldasIseeitpodcast@gmail.com, or if you're on YouTube, you can comment down below. I'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts on anything that I have shared in this podcast. If this episode gave you a new perspective, please share this. Stay curious, keep listening, and I will talk to you in the next episode.
You've been listening to the World as I See It podcast.